So we started with a very simple world, just 4 people. We're now going to notch it up a bit. Instead of 4 people, there are going to be 12 people, because alongside this little world, the valley with the 4 farmers, productive, unproductive, weak, strong, we've got another valley just there, same structure, and another valley just here. So there's our world, the 3 valleys all next to each other, and in between, and still the 4x4 world. And now we're going to introduce one assumption about technology. And it's a very standard, famous assumption in economics, and it's the concept of economies of scale. Usually, in econ, you wouldn't get scale economies in 101, you'd get scale economies by econ 102 or 103, and it would be in the world of production. What scale economies means in the world of production is if we double all the inputs, we more than double the output. Well, we're not going to do scale economies in production, we're going to do it in violence. But it's going to be the same concept. If you double the inputs into violence, you more than double the output. Now, the output in production is very simple. It's just how much grain grows, or as it were. What's the output of violence? Well, the output of violence directly is how much force, but the reason you're exerting that force in violence is in order to win. And so the payoff to violence that you're hoping for is victory. And really, what we mean by scale economies in violence is that if you get a big force against a little force, chances are the big force is going to win. So the payoff to violence is determined by the relative size of the forces. So there's our concept. Why are we going to place it in violence rather than in production, if we're trying to understand the origins of social order? And the answer is that it took the world an awful long time before people realized the scope for scale economies in production. We're going to eventually tell, as it were, the history of the world in this course, but you won't get to scale economies in production until about 1750. Adam Smith, the first famous economist, noticed what was happening in factories in Scotland. That was the first real experience in the world of bringing people together to harness the benefits of scale economies in production. So for thousands of years, production had gone on without scale economies. How about scale economies in violence? The big defeats the small. Well, we don't have to wait very long in history before people work out that there are scale economies in violence. The very earliest histories, ancient histories, prehistories that we can find are stories of armies. And what are armies? They're bringing people together to reap the scale economies in violence. Big armies defeat little armies. So we've got our initial dichotomy, the productive, unproductive farmer, the strong, weak. We've got these 2 economic activities hardwired into social behavior, production and violence. And now, onto that scenario, we've got scale economies, but only in violence. So what's going to happen? So we're now going to apply that concept of scale economies in violence to the little world I've set up. The 3 valleys, and in each valley there's one guy who's living by violence, and there are 3 guys who are living by farming. This guy, the strong farmer, he's keeping what he produces. This guy, the bad, weak farmer, who's just clinging on, maybe dead next year. This guy, who's a good farmer, but he's basically paying, he's at the wrong end of a protection racket. So he's producing a lot, not actually eating very much, because he's handing a lot of his stuff to the violent guy. And that's happening in each valley. These three guys are already specialized in violence. That's what they do for a living. They're violent people. They've given up farming. These guys are all busy farming. What opportunities are presented by scale economies in violence that are not there if we don't have scale economies? And here's the opportunity I've got to sketch. We've got three guys who are individually violent, but individually they're no stronger than these three guys who are farming. These are the strong farmers. They can look after themselves. But if these three violent guys could get together, if they can get together fast enough, then, and they go to this farmer here and say, pay up or else. Now maybe this guy can run off to these guys and say, help. And he tries. But this guy's not actually being threatened, nor is this guy. So maybe they think, well, we'll just keep our heads down. It's nothing to do with us. There's some dispute in this valley over here. We don't know about it. It's not our problem. Doubtless, this guy will say, I'm just helping my friend who's been really messed up by this crook here. Right? So there'll be misinformation going about as well as truth. If these three guys get together in an alliance, this strong guy is actually no longer strong. Because remember, in scale economies of violence, the outcome of violence, victory, defeat, depends not upon absolute strength, depends upon relative strength. So there's an incentive for these three guys to form an alliance. And then they control the valley. Instead of having three productive farmers that they can be predatory against, they've now got 6 productive farmers they can be predatory against. So that's the emergence of an entity which is larger than the individual. And it's an entity whose business is violence. These three guys are the thugs, united in generating scale economies and violence.